You are live with us at Mav Sports Take, episode 48, your weekly podcast for sports, business, and a whole lot more, covering the sporting world that you know it, and then the side of it that maybe you don't hear about too much. Ryan Roberts, of course, usually joined by my good friend David Turner, 18-year scouting vet across the NFL, CFL, and three straight Arena League championships with the Arizona Rattlers. Fortunately, David cannot be with us. Hopefully, we're going to have him back next week. But I have a esteemed co-host to join me tonight, a good friend, defensive back specialist. I got Mr. Jeremiah Bogan, who is a defensive back at Limestone University. He is also a scouting assistant for the East-West Shrine Bowl, as well as co-host of On Campus with JB and Skiggy on the Around the Block podcast network. Jeremiah, how are you, brother? Appreciate you hopping on with me tonight, man. How's it going?
Man, I'm good. It's always good to talk ball with you, especially on a live setting. Love just getting to talk to you. We go way back, so it's always good to be here.
We do, man. We go back to the Pro Football Ready days, man.
Yeah.
It seems like so long ago, and I'm excited that you were able to join us. Of course, like you said, we are live here on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So if anybody has any live questions they want to throw into the chat, please feel free to do so. Jeremiah and I will be talking a lot of questions specific to defensive backs that we got from the Twitter verse this yesterday, actually, when I put out the questions. And then also, of course, we have two fantastic interviews that I'm really excited to get to tonight. We're going to have on Mr. James Houston IV, who is a linebacker that was originally a part of the Florida Gator football team that Jeremiah is a fan of, so he knows very well. And he is transferring over to Jackson State. So we're going to talk a little bit of his time in the portal, decision to go to Jackson State. And then for the second interview this evening, we're also going to have the director of scouting and player personnel for the College Gridiron Showcase, which I do scout for, Mr. Mike Riddleman. And he is going to discuss the event and an inside look into the All-Star circuit. Specifically, we're going to talk a lot about, hey, last year with COVID, a lot of the All-Star games were ravished by the ravaged, I should say, not ravished. That is the wrong word, but they were ravaged by the events of the COVID-19 pandemic, student athletes getting an extra year of eligibility. A lot of guys went back to school. So we're going to talk about just the impact of that on this episode as well. Before we do, we want to let you know that we here at Maverick Sports Consulting would like to say to you that if you're a college looking to improve your recruiting department to maximize the transfer portal, high school recruiting, and junior college transfers to turn your program around quickly, David has 19 years of personnel experience and 10 years NFL experience managing college scouting departments as well as pro personnel departments. Mavericks is primed and ready to work with your existing staff and coaches to build you a recruiting department that will mirror your efforts in the coaching department. Let David and Maverick Sports Consulting assist you in building a championship team in 2021. Visit mavericksportsconsulting.com for packages and info. So like I said, we had some topics that we wanted to run through. A lot of questions that we got. A lot of people really, I love the interactive nature. And of course, I knew that since I had Jeremiah on and I tagged him in the tweet, that defensive back questions were on the horizon for us. And boy, were they. So Jeremiah, we're going to tackle a couple of these pretty quick here. I'm actually going to go to our good friend Devin Jackson gave us a fun one, very 2022 NFL draft specific here, which is awesome for me because when David's on here, he doesn't like talking 2022 NFL draft too often. So we're going to really dive in here. He's asking us a sleeper cornerback and safety for the 2022 NFL draft. Jeremiah, I know you've probably even dug a lot deeper in the defensive back room than I have. You want to throw out a name first, then we'll go back and forth. We'd love to hear it.
Would you like to go safety or corner first?
You're a corner, so let's start safety, and then we'll backtrack.
Safety. I hate to steal this one from you because you actually just recently watched him, but he was a guy. It's funny that you wrote about him because I studied him about a month and a half ago. I want to say Jalen Petrie from Baylor, dude, he's legit, man. I love everything about his game. I think he's everything that the modern NFL has become for safety prospects. And the funny thing is about what he does at Baylor is they don't use his athleticism enough in deep zones and he shows really good athleticism playing man to man. I'm excited to see him. You want to know what I wrote in my report for him?
I would love to hear it.
I put Jamal Adams with man coverage abilities or coverage abilities. Period. That's what I gave him.
So I would love to hash out him a little bit because I was very interested about Pitre because honestly, the 4-2-5, right, that Baylor runs, actually they run a lot of like 3-3-5 at some points, right, because they're playing a lot of odd man fronts. But so in that defense, they're going to use this guy as you can call him a nickel, you can call him an overhang, whatever you want to call him. He is strong side of the field. He's basically a strong safety that's going to play that overhang position between the tackle and if it's a number 2 receiver, right, or maybe number 3, depending on what we're looking at, twins or trips or deuce or whatever. So Pitre is always in that spot, which I have a tough time with sometimes, and I'll be very honest about this. I've talked about this a bunch. That position in the NFL for these glorified safety linebacker hybrids doesn't exist. They take those guys out of the game. They put more athletic nickels in. So sometimes I don't think it's the most translatable position. That's what, I love Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah as an athlete. I was worried about the transition a little bit because, what spot does he fit into? Because he's not going to play that overhang unless you're playing against a bunch of 12 personnel where you're going to keep that big nickel in the game. He's not going to play that a ton because it's just the nature of the situation in the NFL right now is that we have 2 linebackers on the field, and then we have 5 defensive backs. That is what is happening nowadays. So I watched Jalen Pitre and Terrell Bernard, by the way, linebacker who I absolutely love. But Pitre speaking. So I'm like, okay, what is his impact in pass? Because I see, against screens, the dude is a dog, right? Why would you ever throw a screen at Jalen Pitre? I personally wouldn't. He's ferocious. He hits all those traditional things. Hair on fire, plays physically. It's all great stuff, man. Working from depth, he is a good tackler in the open field. I am good with all that stuff. My question is, what's the impact against the pass? Because he's 5'11", 195 pounds, give or take a couple pounds. So he's not a guy that you're going to play in a traditional linebacker set very often, right? That's not him. You can play him on the second level in some instances, but he's never going to be a guy where it's going to be a true weak side linebacker playing pursuit. That's not going to be his game. So the question is, can he be a safety? And I came away, and the 2 biggest things that I wrote was I thought his zone instincts were fantastic. I really did. I thought he had pretty loose hips, all that good stuff. I agree that I think that he can play some man coverage. But for me, I was really taken off guard with how just fluid and how versatile he was in the sense of he saw things so well developing in front of him where I think that he could be a guy that could play 2 high a ton. He's never going to be a single high free safety, but the guy that I wrote down, Jeremiah, for the comp was Chuck Clark. He reminds me a ton of Chuck Clark for Baltimore because when Chuck Clark was at Virginia Tech, he did a lot of the same things, man. He was playing rover a ton at Virginia Tech. And I think that also he wrapped up the tackles at Virginia Tech, but you didn't know what he was really working from depth. I think this is the same type of scenario here. I think that personally, Jalen Pitre is a prototype 2 high, strong safety that you're going to want to roll him down more often than not. You don't want to get caught where you're rolling the other way and then he has to play single high a ton. He can be passable at times in that role. But for me, 2 high, strong safety, I gave him a late 3rd round grade. I was a fan of him.
Okay. I loved everything about his game. Like you said, when you have a guy I'm always going to fall in love with guys who have instincts, guys who just know where they're supposed to go, where they're supposed to be, and they just can do things that you can't coach at the end of the day. And when I first saw him, I heard that he's an overhang guy and he played in the box. There's no way he can cover. Start seeing him move around a little bit in coverage, playing against tight ends. I said, wait, I think this guy has some pretty good hips. And then you're like, why do they always play him in the box, strictly in the box? Similar to the way that West Virginia played Tyke Smith last year. I mean, dude played no kind of deep zones or anything. He strictly played in the box, pretty much like a Mike linebacker at times is what he was playing. So Pitre is a guy I love so much. I think I gave him a 2nd round grade with the possibility of sliding into the late 1st just because he fits so much in the modern NFL. He kind of helps you. He can change a lot of things for your defense. I think that goes a long way.
Oh, so you're like high on him. You're not like kind of high. You're high on my man.
Versus, it's one thing to be versatile. It's one thing to be versatile and be a playmaker. Like being able to make plays and take the ball away, that's a premium.
I think the one really good thing too, and coming from the scouting world, obviously we both scout for different all-star games that can't be undersold, and some people are going to roll their eyes and be like, who cares? I think the dude is a dynamic special teams player. So like we talk about the ceiling versus floor thing, like Flores, this dude's going to be on a roster every single year because the dude plays with his hair on fire. I really do like Jalen Petrie at times. I really do, man. He is a good football player to say the least. I know that we talked a little bit. I actually texted you, I think, about this guy. I'm trying to find my list. Actually, no. Wait, are we staying with safety? You want to stay with safety?
We can stay with safety. Do whatever you need to do.
I mean, I'm just thinking, man, because there's a couple corners that were very intriguing to me.
I have 3 from the same conference.
You have 3 from the same conference.
From the same conference.
You want to throw somebody else at me real quick, and then I'll go back to back on mine. Let me hear one. On
the safety or the corner one?
Either one. Your pick. You're the guest.
We'll go with the easiest one from the Big Ten. Avery Young, obviously, been about 3 months.
I've been love Avery Young, man. You love him.
Been raving about this guy. I have the same vibes that I got from him that I got from J.C. Horn last April when I watched Horn and thought he was corner 2. Obviously, you went corner 1 on him early, so you were even higher. But that's how I felt about Avery Young. First, I watched him. I was like, why am I watching a guy who's strictly playing the slot at 6'1"? Does he play any outside corner at all? But then he was playing the nickel, did a great job in the nickel. Next thing you know, he moves outside in the Ohio State game, played some press. I was thoroughly impressed with his eyes. He just knows exactly where to be at all times. Really good athlete. He played more outside in the Maryland game too, I believe. Showed some really good work in press coverage, able to stay square, use his length. I said, wow, this looks like a first-round corner to me. Hopefully he plays more outside next year for Rutgers, but he's got some instincts, man-to-man skills, sticky, extremely smart, and he tackles, which is huge. Tackles like he's a safety, so he's a guy I love.
Yeah, see, he was a weird guy for me. I will fully admit I need to do more work on Avery Young because I had watched both the linebackers, Fadakasi, and I was a Tyshawn Fogg fan last year, and I know we talked a little bit about Bo Melton as well, who is a guy that I definitely want to touch on at some point when we talk wide receiver. So I definitely get it with Young. I mean, I think the verified measurables are right around 6'1", 205 pounds. Like you mentioned JC, like that's JC to a T, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I loved the fact about JC was the fact that when he was a true freshman, they were like, you're too good to not play, and even though you're not going to start an outside corner, so we threw you into the nickel. And I think that helped him a ton down the road to be able to be that guy that could just go with the wide receiver, right? Like Devontae Adams lines up outside. Go ahead, JC. Lines up inside in the slot. Go ahead, JC. Like, it doesn't matter. There's a switch wherever at like so many different things that I think that brings to you. I want to see more of Avery Young. I want to see more. It's a similar vibe to a degree, and I agree with this. I'm not nearly as high on Avery Young as I was on JC, but I think that Avery Young is a candidate where the minute that he nabs an interception or two, because I think he only had one last year, maybe none. So I think he's a guy that a lot of people are going to be a little hesitant on because they just need to see the ball production because that's how
it was with JC too, remember?
It was 0 interceptions heading into the year for JC. I definitely agree on that. I'm just – there's something I want a little more from Avery. I don't know if you agree with this. I think he has good feet. I think he's quick in the transition. I don't know if he has long speed. I'm a little hesitant on if he has long speed or not. JC, I never got those vibes because, I mean, JC even told me, right? He was like, dude, no one ever got on top of me at the SEC level. Like, people didn't think he was fast for some reason. They're like, show me the tape where someone got on top of me. I'm like, yeah, true. I never saw you got beat deep once. So, yeah, that makes sense. So, we'll see about Avery, man. We'll see about Avery. I know we're going to welcome James Houston into the show in just a second. One guy I wanted to touch on real briefly, Rashad Wisdom. We talked about him. All right, we have talked about him. My guy from UTSA. So this is the guy where we talked about, hey, Jalen Petrie could be the guy where rolling down, maybe rolls up sometimes. I think Rashad Wisdom is the guy that doesn't matter which way he has to roll. I don't know if I would say that this kid is the premier center fielder, right? Like, I don't think that's ever going to be his role, to be very honest. But what I think that he does do exceptionally well is that he does a little bit of everything so well. And he's about 5'9", 5'10", 205 pounds. So, like, he's not a huge guy. But this dude plays with some extremely bad intentions. And then when he was a freshman at UTSA, he was, again, so good. They're like, you're going to play nickel, right? He was going to play nickel. He went into fall camp. He thought he was still going to be the full-time nickel the whole time. Like, he thought. And then they were like, actually, we need you to play back there a little bit. And he did some stuff, man. Playing the post was one of the I think, North Texas, where he was, it was like double post. And then they were trying to sneak the inside vertical down the seam, right, to make that single high safety guess wrong, right? Like, they were trying to play off of him. And he played this post so well. And I'm now thinking, I think he could do that. I think he could do that pretty well. And I think that he could do that consistently. And I think that he's a guy that can roll down. I think that he can place a man-to-man. I think he can do a little bit of everything. 95 tackles, 4 interceptions as only a true sophomore. Talk to him a little bit about, like, hey, where do you see yourself? And he just named me all these versatile defensive backs where I'm like, I get it now, man. I see it 100%. So Rashad Wisdom's a dude that I am super excited about UTSA. Only a true junior this year, so more than likely is going to be a 2023 kid. But I think that he is exceptionally talented. I was a big fan of the UTSA kid. And they have 2 corners, Jeremiah. I don't know if you saw these kids. They have this Tariq Woolen kid who is 6'5" at one corner.
Yeah.
And then they had the Texas A&M kid, the transfer that played nickel at like 6'4", that transferred over. So they're going to have 6'5", 6'4", and then Rashad Wisdom in the back. I'm like, that's fun, man. I don't know if it's good, but it's certainly fun. Oh, man. I don't know. Tariq Woolen's like 6'5", 210, former wide receiver, now playing corner. I'm like, I don't know about that. We'll see.
I don't think that's going to work.
I don't think it's going to work either personally, but I guess you just have to see how it works out. I don't know, man. So, want to now welcome into the show Mr. James Houston. James Houston, former Florida Gator linebacker, now Jackson State football player. James, appreciate you, man. How's everything been going, brother?
I'm doing good, sir. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. I'm happy to have you on the show here on Mavs Sports Take. I know that it's probably insanely busy. You made your decision. I hit you up. I'm sure you're if you're not on campus yet at Jackson State, I'm sure you're itching to get there. So I kind of really want to take the viewers through a little bit of a ride here, James. And I know that when I looked at in preparation for the interview, right, I looked at, hey, I want to look at his recruiting profile. I want to go back to where he came from and really dig a little deeper. And I saw that you were obviously a 3-star kid, highly recruited. I think you played for Pat Surtain Sr. While in high school. And I'm looking at schools like Auburn, Wisconsin, Arkansas, Cal, LSU, Florida State, Miami, obviously Florida, among others. And obviously you gave the commitment and you played your career here for the Florida Gators. So I want to take us through a little bit. Give me the scoop on the recruiting back in the day and why staying at Florida, staying in the home state was the best spot for you.
Yeah. So coming up in my high school days, playing for Coach Pat Surtain at American Heritage, extremely talented school in South Florida, with many NFL players that I've been on the same team with. I started playing football at really varsity level at junior year. And that's when the offers started to come in around late in the season. And Wisconsin was my first. My old coach, Coach Rump, was the coach at UM. And I eventually got an offer there. I was about my 5th offer. And, staying in the state, it was just really, really important to me. I always kind of knew I was going to either be at UM, UF, or FSU. But I always did like Wisconsin. It was a very good option for me. But it was really Coach Randy Shannon, man. He was a great recruiter down there in South Florida. He has some really nice roots. Coaching at Miami, all the great talented linebackers that he's coached down there. And it was almost like a Miami away from Miami, you know what I'm saying? And it just felt like a perfect decision. UF, Gators, great history and tradition, you know, and it was I felt like it was a great decision when I initially was going to high school. And I played my 4 years there, and it's been great. And I had a great experience there.
Yeah, James, I need to ask you, man, because I want to talk about high school football in Florida for a second, right? Because I'm up here in New Jersey, which is a pretty solid secondary state, right? Like we know there's the Texases, the Californias, the Floridas. Every time I got a Texas or California guy, they say they're the best high school football in the land. Florida, what do you have to say, man? Florida's the best, right? Has to be.
Yeah, I think we all know that. I think we all know South Florida is just it's very rich in young talented players down there that play football. Football is like a religion down there. So I can't see nobody really competing with just South Florida. You know what I'm saying? Not even the whole state of Florida. Just South Florida is not too many people not too many states that can compete with us. Yeah, so Texas, Cali, I don't know about that. You know.
So, James, obviously, you just decided to make the big move, transferring to Jackson State. We talked about your recruitment a little. What went into for you? You decided to choose Jackson State after we talked about all the offers you had coming to high school. What made you go to Jackson State as opposed to looking back over all those schools that were recruiting you out of high school, trying to go to another big Power Five? Just what went to your decision to land where you are now?
Man, I love Jackson State, man. Jackson State was the best spot for me. I promise you that. It's an HBCU, rich in tradition. My family have all gone to HBCUs and thrived, and they told me it's been the best year or two that they've taken in their life. And so I decided to do it. I got other places to go to, and I came here and I wanted to be part of this rich tradition and start something new. You know, I think we're really on a historic season this year, and I think we could really make some noise and you know surprise some people and really get people to come and realize what HBCUs can do. So,
James, I know. So my usual co-host David Turner is a former NFL scout. Was for a long time, and he does a lot of work with HBCUs. They actually held a combine for a lot of the players this past draft cycle to try to get extra looks because it's been a crazy couple years with COVID, right? Like it was something that kind of just ravaged everybody and made a lot of things difficult, especially for draft prospects. Talking about the HBCU thing, because you just mentioned that a little bit, obviously the historical context of Jackson State and the Walter Paytons of the world and some of the great football players that we have seen come through not only college football, but the NFL. For you, when you kind of sat back and thought about that angle a little bit, right? The historical context, was that something that you knew a ton about? Or was it something like, hey, when I talked to Jackson State, when I visited, they sold me on how important this was and how rich this tradition is?
so it's actually a little bit of both. So I mean, like I told you before, my family have all attended HBCUs. My mother attended Clark Atlanta for her master's, and so did my father. My grandmother has, I'm sorry, my late grandmother has attended Clark Atlanta as well. So is my father has attended Xavier University.
Nice.
So I mean, it's just I kind of already knew about it. I've been to games like the Classic. And really, my friend that I really met, my dear friend Nick Smith, that I met in UF, he wasn't blessed enough to play this game anymore, but he was one of the best players I've probably ever seen on the field at UF. And he probably only played a year. Unfortunately, he can't play anymore. He had to medically retire because of his back. But I mean, he told me a lot about Jackson State because his father, Fernando Smith, attended Jackson State, and he was all world there, and he got drafted and went to the league and had a great, promising career. And so, I mean, I kind of knew about it. He told me a lot about it, just about his father, and so I was blessed to have that connection. And then coming here, I took a visit to Jackson State, and it was great. I loved it. It was almost perfect, you know what I'm saying? And I visited other places, and it it gave me that feeling, when I was here I felt at home and I just felt like the coaches were very genuine and just really want the best for their players. And I felt like it was just the right decision, it was the right move. And I mean, I feel like it's gonna work out for me.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm excited because obviously everybody wants to talk about, hey, what Deion Sanders is building down there is going to be a special thing, obviously, right? And I know that everyone always says coming out of high school, they're like, decide on a school, not a coaching staff and all that type of stuff. But like, let's be honest about it, man. Like relationship building, right? Like you mentioned Randy Shannon, right? Like those guys are what sold the program to you and you developed a relationship with them. So I would love the perspective here because we're going to ask a little more specifically about the portal in a second, but like everything's escalated so much quicker, right? Like make a decision, get on all these visits, make your decision quick because you're a guy that's been in college for 4 years. Like you don't want to waste any time, right? Like you want to find where you're playing football. So how important was that relationship building in such a short amount of time? And the relationship you were able to build with the coach and staff at Jackson State, and maybe more specifically, Deion Sanders, like how important was that for you in your decision?
Right. So initially, I had other offers and stuff like that, and other places to go to, Power Fives. And I had to build relationships with them and keep in contact with them, and I visited them all and wanted to see what they all offered for me. And I visited with Jackson State, and like I told you, I fell in love, man. It felt right. It just felt like the right people that can elevate me and take me to the level that I need to go to. You know, even though it's an HBCU and people might look at it some sort of way, it's football, baby. And Deion Sanders in prime time, we right here, we under the lights, and we got some real dudes on our defense and on our offense, man. So y'all gonna see this year, and I'm really excited just to get out there and play football again, man, and play with my teammates, my new teammates. You know, it's refreshing.
And again, fresh new linebacker for Jackson State, James Houston, the fourth. James, I'm excited for Jeremiah's next question for you because he was a guy that actually experienced the transfer process a little bit this offseason. So, Jeremiah, hit him with some transfer stuff, man.
First of all, you talked about the talent that's in the Jackson State room. Like, Deion Sanders has worked the transfer portal. He has worked that transfer portal, and I think it's been a great thing for college football because, as we say, as college football players ourselves, one day it could be a practice, the next day our coach could be taking a higher job, and no one gets mad at them. But when we want to transfer, it's something wrong with the kid. We're immature. We're a generation of quitters, everything, yada, yada, yada. So for you, what has the transfer portal been like? What was the experience for you, and what do you think of it? How do you think it's helped college football, and where do you see it just going?
For me, as a grad transfer, I feel like it was straight business, and that's how I kind of went into it with my head. And so I really just had to sit down and figure out what programs really would be the best for me. Do I need to go back to a program that may not be molding me into the right player that I need to be, or do I need to, go to a place where it can mold me and can take me to that next level, So it was pretty simple for me. It was pretty simple. I did my homework on all the schools, but it's always gonna be that stigma. Why is a kid leaving? This and that, and coaches don't always, stick up for you. So it could be a little rough, but it all works out. If you can play ball, you're gonna end up getting looked at. So it's good and evil to it, but I think it's important to have it just for the kids to be able to, get out of the programs that aren't feeding them. You know what I'm saying? Really giving into them. So.
Because you could definitely agree with this. You go through the recruiting process in high school. Schools are going to tell you everything you want to hear throughout all that, yada, yada. But then they're going to tell you, yeah, you have to compete, and you understand that. You fall in love in your visits. But at the end of the day, a visit is nothing. It's just a visit, yeah. So when you get up to school, it may not be the experience that you think it is. And believe it or not, if you're at a place where you don't really feel like you can be yourself and everything, that's going to affect how you play. So sometimes guys just need that change of scenery. In your case, you did everything that you're supposed to do at Florida. You got your degree. It's time for you to move on. You have that choice. You have that luxury. You did what you were supposed to do when you were there. So, hey, I'm all for it, being able to have guys in the transfer portal. So,
yes, sir.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And that's what I was about to say, Jeremiah, is the fact of like, James, when you committed, you said, like, I am going to play football and I'm going to get my degree here. You did both things. You're free to explore your options, obviously, fit whatever is best for you. And kind of the last thing I wanted to ask you before we let you go, we thank you so much for all the time you've given us, is I mentioned in the beginning, I don't know if you've been on campus yet for good, if you're working out with the team. So what's the timetable of getting to campus if you haven't already? And just hit us with some expectations for this year. Like, what is going to end your career on the right foot?
Yeah, so I'm here now. I've been working out with the team. It's been exciting. I've been here for about a week. Like I told you, I love my teammates. I really feel like we got a lot of talent here. I really feel like we can take it far and just have a really historic season here at Jackson State. We built it with something really special, and Tom's doing all the right things, you know, to make sure that he's building that brand and making sure that we get that light that we deserve. So I'm excited. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here to stay. I ain't going nowhere. So yeah.
Love it, man. I love it. And NFL draft background here, so I'm sure we'll be talking again in the near future after your dominant season with Jackson State, man. James Houston IV, appreciate you, brother. This was fantastic. Just getting a little background on you, man. We really appreciate you taking some time tonight with us.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Best of luck to you, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It's been nice watching.
All right, so James Houston, the fourth linebacker, grad transfer from the University of Florida, now playing his final year at Jackson State. I know he's going to be on some radars very soon. A highly recruited kid who was actually pretty productive, you know, in the opportunities he had at Florida. So I think he's a guy that some people are going to need to keep tabs on for sure in the NFL draft world. Excited to have on somebody that knows the NFL draft world very soon here, and Mike Riddleman, of course, who is my boss. But before we get to Mike, because I know he's waiting so patiently behind the scenes, as the world starts to open back up and workers return to the office place, are you looking for how to improve team dynamics? Maverick Sports Consulting is here to help you welcome your employees back to the workplace with some team building exercises. We will bring your company back together in an energetic way, a way that will motivate them to work together in person again. We are excited to help you welcome back your company to the in-person work environment. Sign up today at mavericksportsconsulting.com. So again, like I was saying, we got to welcome Mr. Mike Riddleman onto the show. He is Director of Scouting and Player Personnel for the College Gridiron Showcase, as well as an assistant coach for the Black Hawk Cougars. Fresh off of practice, if I do have that correct. Mike, how are you, my friend?
My man, how's it going? Yeah, I'm right off of practice. So a great Wednesday practice, offensive practice, and happy to be on, fellas.
And we appreciate you having you on, man. Fresh off of coaching some tight ends. Mike takes some time with us. Mike, I didn't ask Jeremiah this before we started here, okay? So I got this jersey in the mail today. It's a fictional football player in jersey, okay? What does the name Latimer mean to you? Does it mean anything?
The program.
The program. Yes, you got it. Jeremiah, you have no idea what the program is. You have zero idea.
Man, that's dating me some. I just turned 30 this Saturday, so I mean.
Oh, that was like a 90s movie. It's not dating us too much, man.
Oh, man.
90s was only 10 years ago, right? So.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. Holy cow. Hey, welcome to the show, Mike. Pow! Right there, you're old.
I think we're the same age, Mike. So if you're old, I'm old. So, Mike, of course, I kind of introed you a little bit. College Gridiron Showcase, Director of Scouting and Player Personnel. So kind of getting on a more serious topic here. I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about your involvement with the game. So why don't you take us just through a little bit of how you first got introduced to the game, how you got involved into the position you are, and just highlight the College Gridiron Showcase and what it has kind of evolved into over the last couple of years.
Absolutely. So my first introduction was in 2016, I want to say. I was an intern, man. I was running around, getting water, pushing carts, whatever, anything needed to be done, waking up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning while in Texas and, busting my butt. Then I got to sit in on, the coaches meetings, and Jose Jefferson's one of the co-founders, looks at me and goes, "You're going to keep time for practice." I'm like, all right, whatever. So he got me this egg timer, and I had to hold this egg timer on the field and say, all right, transition drills and all that. They called me egg boy or whatever, and that stuck with me for about a year or two. And then just working my way up, I got to be in on the roster selection meetings during the off season. I was a scouting assistant and worked my way up. And then they gave me a nice title of, director of scouting and player personnel. But, it's a team effort, I like to say, at CGS. Ryan's a part of it now, and Ryan does a phenomenal job. Craig Red, who's the other co-founder, and Jose have turned this thing for the past eight years into a phenomenal event. It's grown each year. Well notoriety, and I've learned from them every single year, just the game of football and the game of life. I mean, they're two great mentors to me, really taking me step by step in how we put together this event, not just from a football perspective, but from an event perspective. And, I couldn't be blessed and happy enough to be, a part of this journey.
And Mike, I know you mentioned that you obviously have worked your way up. I want to ask you, because you have the coaching background. I have a coaching background as well. Like, I remember starting as an unpaid assistant, coming right out of college, then kind of, moving up. Your coach. Oh, now you're a position coach. Now you might be calling a defense on JV or freshman football or whatever. How has that coaching background helped you in being able to escalate on that ladder? Because I feel like some people now are a little impatient with that type of process.
Oh man, it's helped me tremendously. Seeing the game of football it's so different from when I was a player to seeing it from now. You got to see the whole field. Played at Waynesburg University, started 3 years at D end, and then I had the opportunity to be a grad assistant. There wasn't it was just a paid assistant, student assistant pretty much, but I was in grad school for a year. And my D-line coach, Alex Smith, and my defensive coordinator, Scott Vinik, really took me under their wings and really showed me the game, how to be a coach. And then I've been coaching high school ball for about 7 years now, learning the game from different vantage points. The staff I'm on now, Zach Hayward's the head coach. We have a great two great offense coordinators in Dom Henderson and Jordan Lyles, and a great DC and Ryan Levenger. Really have, the dynamic of our play calling has been tremendous from that aspect, and a staff that really grows. And I've had a lot of mentors growing up in the coaching world. So I know I'm rambling on, but I mean, it's really, it's helped me tremendously from an evaluation standpoint, because, I'm not looking at like this. I'm seeing everything now. And, it's cool. It's cool because I get the best of both worlds. I actually get to coach a position group at CGS. I've coached the DNs the past 2 years. So I got elevated to that. So it's been awesome. I really can't, I'm like a kid in the candy store when I go down there, because it's just football and around great people and learning. And the key thing is always learning.
And I have a question that is there's a right and a wrong answer, but I'm going to let Jeremiah get one in real quick.
My question is, you talked about you changing as a coach and everything, and how your perspective on the game has just evolved over time. But how has the game itself evolved over time, and how are you guys able to navigate through the uncertainty with COVID last year? I had a buddy who actually played in the game last year, so.
Oh, awesome! I hope he enjoyed his experience.
He did.
Oh, nice. Wow. That's a great question. So, are you talking about the CGS event itself, or like the game of football?
Yeah, obviously you guys get more talented. Like, the roster gets more talented every single year from just me keeping up with it a few years ago. So that's the biggest evolution I've noticed. But what have you noticed?
Yeah, because Mike, what was it last year? You had 12 players drafted and like 70 signed free agent contracts, right?
So we had 12. I believe the final total, and correct me if I'm wrong, 77 undrafted free agents. And I believe we had 7 or 8 drafted in the CFL draft too. We have a great connection with the CFL. We had a player drafted in the top 3 or 4, I believe. And then 2 years ago, we had a player go number 2 overall in the CFL draft. So, that's the cool thing about us. We evaluate players from Canada, Canadian guys who are playing in the States. The CFL, it's a good pipeline as well. We're starting to look into, European players and whatnot. So, the going back to your question, Jeremiah, for the whole COVID thing was there wasn't a manual for it. Let's just say that. And I thought Jose and Craig really directed the event tremendously into uncharted waters. And what I mean by that, putting in safety protocols with the city of Fort Worth, really getting everyone together, 6 feet apart, social distancing, implementing masks, really just, it was a group effort. And I thought their leadership was key to guiding us into uncharted waters. And it was interesting, but I'm glad, everything turned out great. It was an opportunity for teams and scouts to get out on the road for the first time, for players, even though we weren't in pads, but to show their body types, how their movement skills, their ball skills, whether they're a skill guy or whatnot, linemen, moving around. So it was good. It was a great opportunity to see how the work on the fly and change to your environment pretty much.
Well, one more question to follow that up. So you talked about just how different everything was with COVID. Does that kind of go into changing what you guys will do in the future, as far as maybe you guys figured out, okay, maybe we should do a little bit more of this and a little less of this, or maybe we could do without this and without that? Has that kind of, because COVID kind of the same way COVID showed us that email, that kind of type of deal.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We're going back to full pads. We missed the full pad aspect. So, I think the dynamic of it, how we can adapt, how we can change if needed, that showed us we could do it. But I think, seeing live action players go live action in pads, that's a skill set we need to have, and we're excited to have that coming back.
And I think it speaks volumes for the growth of the game, Mike, because we talked about last year, right? And I know it was a tough situation for everyone, but we had the NFLPA Bowl, we had the East-West game that both had to cancel, go fully virtual because of just so many uncertain factors. Like, they said things that they couldn't predict. And I think it speaks volumes to the event that you, Craig, Jose put on, that you were able to last in against what was so many obstacles. And I'm sure a lot of obstacles that popped up last minute because you're still – trying to figure it out. And I really want to applaud you guys kind of for that. And I want to get in. Of course, man. And I know last year specifically, a couple guys just off the top of my head. I know Zach Davidson was down there, of course, who went in the 5th round by Minnesota. I think Jason Pinnock was down there. Was he not? Defensive back out of Pittsburgh, I think went in the 4th round. So a couple highly drafted.
4th or 5th, yeah.
Yeah, so a couple of highly drafted kids out of the CGS last year. My question is just kind of looking at the full scope a little bit. You can go last year if you want, but like more wide scope. Who are some of the more talented football players that you have seen come through CGS during your time?
Man, one that sticks out is Sebastian Joseph Day, who's now the starting nose tackle for the LA Rams. Just a well put together defensive lineman. Versatility, playing up and down the front at Rutgers, and he's doing a phenomenal job with the Rams right now. Another one is Gunnar Olszewski, who's with the Patriots, coming out of Bemidji State, and he was a safety coming out, and he transitioned to receiver with the Patriots. Don't quote me on that. I just going off memory. This is, you're putting me on the spot here. And there have been phenomenal players up and down at CGS. So I'm trying not to miss any, but like those are the two guys that stand out in my mind. Gunnar made first team or second team NFL all punt returner, if I'm not mistaken. Trying to think who else. Man, you are putting me on the spot, man. I should have came prepared.
Hey, man, I put a couple good ones out there from last year. You gave us a couple good ones. I will say I'm very happy that you supplied the Patriots with their white slot receiver who can return. They need to have that guy, man. They need to have that guy. Speaking
of the Patriots, another good one who's now with the Dolphins, Adam Butler, defensive tackle.
That's a great one.
Out of Vanderbilt, man. Came on as undrafted free agent. I think he won 2 Super Bowls with them. One as a rotational guy, one as a starter. But man, it was cool to watch him grow and develop, and great guy too. So a lot of talent, and for the players I'm missing, I do apologize, but there's a lot of talent there. And the big thing for us at CGS, we just want to give an opportunity for these kids to showcase their talents. And we smile we have a big grin on Sundays when they're performing well. So it's just, we're just there to cheer them on and give them a platform.
And again, when you put on a great event year after year, you're going to miss some guys because you're just like, there's too much talent coming through here, man. I just don't remember ball.
So, I mean, we've been lucky and blessed to have great people like yourself on staff. And, we have a great support system of coaches. And, again, the leadership of Craig and Jose. It's been an awesome ride.
As you talk about the growth of the game and how much better it gets each and every year, you guys are without COVID this year, no restrictions. Cross our fingers that there's no restrictions. Obviously, I'm sure you're excited about what's about to happen with this year. Just talk about the preparation that goes into putting on an All-Star Game event, from the rosters, from the venue, just everything. Like, what's
absolutely, absolutely. So from a roster standpoint, and Ryan can attest to this, we've been having our scouting meetings starting in July right now. We're hoping to have our board put together by beginning of August, not a fully formed board, but like something we can look at and say, okay, we can formulate this into the end of August, and then have our watch list come out for both big school, D1 players, and then have a small school watch list as well, giving those guys some recognition. To give you guys a little insight on how the event works out. We have a 2-day event, a small school showcase, where it's FCS, D2, D3, NAIA players, where they might not have a high draft grade or no draft grade at all, but they show those qualities of, the abilities to play at the next level. So we give them an opportunity. And the cool thing is, we don't decide who moves up to our main 4-day showcase. It's the NFL and CFL teams. And we go around, we say, listen, who stood out to you? Who do you want to see more of? I mean, so that's really, it's taking it out of our hands and saying to these teams, who do you want to see more of? Who's stood out to you in that aspect? And so it's, when you're bringing in 300, 400 players for a week, you have to be on your toes. You have to have, the numbers crunch and everything on what the roster availability, roster spots for everything, and making sure you're bringing in quality talent. So, you can showcase the NFL and these NFL and CFL teams. So, from the venue perspective, Jose and Craig, they do a great job. Make sure the hotel's ready, venue set up, the speakers are set up, because we do seminars with these athletes, give them the financial background. Rod Newhouse, who's on our board of trustees for CGS, he's a former pro player personnel director. Now he's a financial wealth advisor, really does a phenomenal job of speaking to these guys, what to expect. And also Craig Red too, who's a former agent, what to expect that first year in the NFL. So we try to give them all the information they need to succeed that first year in.
I love it. Again, Mike Riddleman, the Director of Scouting and Player Personnel for the College Gridiron Showcase. Mike, we appreciate all the time tonight, man. I'm going to give you like 30 seconds here if you want to shout out some social media handles where people can follow your work, my friends.
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is at MRITT9140. I know it's random, but, it's just stuck with me for all these years now. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Mike Riddleman. Easy to find. Always willing to talk ball, talk about the event. Love all the media outlets come down. We're media friendly at the event. We're going to have a media day. And then anyone interested in learning about more with it, about coaching or the scouting aspect about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Jose or Craig. We always looking for bringing good people on, good quality people on. And, another thing is, I'm excited because all the all-star events are up and running. Jim Nagy does a tremendous job with the Senior Bowl. Eric Galco just came on with the Shrine Bowl, and he is killing it. He's doing a fantastic job. Dane Vandernet with the NFLPA, and then, and us. So, I mean, I was said during the COVID last year, if all those 4 games are going at once, then it's more opportunities for these athletes to play, and there are 4 great events, and get an opportunity to be showcased. So it's a great time to be in the football world right now, and I'm excited for CGS 2022.
Yeah, man. And we're all obviously excited as well. And that was one of the first things when I met with you and Jose, is Jose kept reiterating, I want to help the kids. I want to help the kids, give them the opportunity. So, Mike Riddleman, appreciate you, man. We'll have to have you back on maybe in the future here, brother, but I appreciate you taking some time.
Absolutely.
All right, awesome, man. You have a good night. Appreciate it so much.
Hey, thanks, guys. I'll see you later.
All right, so there we get the little bit of the all-star breakdown. You mentioned Eric Galko, of course, Jeremiah, now one of the scouting assistants for the Shrine game as well. So good times to be in the all-star circuit. I'm happy that all of them are up and running, and God willing, we're going to have that full all-star experience, because I know especially going back to the 2020 NFL draft, I had so many players just, last minute, like trying to get a video out. There were pro day cancellations, all-star games. Like if you didn't make an all-star game, you were SOL, right? So nice that players hopefully are going to have a full draft process this time around, because obviously last year with a couple of the games canceled, less opportunities. So happy that things seem to be heading in the right direction. Jeremiah, I know we wanted to go back to a little bit of our conversation. We've got about 10 minutes left in the pod. So you had said Avery Young, Jalen Petrie. I threw out Kuzma Madu from UTSA, Rashad Wisdom. So I'm going to throw a corner at you real quick. I know it's a guy that we talked about. You didn't seem that excited about him as I was, but Noah Daniels, cornerback out of TCU. I think he's going to rise, man, because he's a guy that has just had so much bad luck with injury during his time at TCU. I think that so many people are going to talk about Hodges Tomlinson on the other side, who's a good football player. There's no doubt. I think maybe the best nickel in next year's class. Like, I know that some people are going to say he could play outside. He's 5'8", so we'll see about that. But either way, he's definitely a defensive back at the next level, probably a top 3-round player. Like, he's a fantastic football player. I kept looking, though, on the other side in the couple games I watched with 21, this Noah Daniels kid. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, length, check. I thought he had really nice steep speed. I was like, and then I look at the track background. He's like a 10, 300-meter guy. I'm like, check. Flexibility. I thought there were some missteps, working out of the stem a little bit, but I think that he's got solid enough foot quickness. I think it's more of a technical issue than him just having tight hips or tight ankles. Like, I think that he has that necessary requisite short area quickness. I just think that he needs to unlock it. And honestly, he's a guy that hasn't played a ton. So for me, it's a lot of that technical work. Until you have those live bullets, like, you can do a drill perfect in practice as much as you want, but until you see a guy on the other side of you with in the Big 12 that has some talented wide receivers every single year, until you see those live bullets and that live speed, some things need to get worked out a little bit,
Yeah. We talked about him before. I like I said, I did not like him. It was just when I turned him on, when I was watching him, I was curious. I was like, what am I supposed to be seeing here? But like you said, you can see the recovery speed. But for me, it was, why is he always playing a step behind and having to show this?
Because he's like, I got recovery. I'm good. Go ahead.
And like for me, that scares me, because you have a fast guy, but it's like, whenever I see guys getting their toes ran up on and not able to match receivers' tempos, I start to decide, okay, do they have a natural feel for the game? Because guys who have a natural feel, going to be able to match tempos. And the crazy thing is, I thought he was really sticky at the top of routes. Like, I thought he attached with guys at the top of routes extremely well, especially for a guy as long as he is. He showed some pretty good short area quickness. So, like, I do think he can be a riser. I actually had him. I graded him as a fourth or fifth round, but I did say I see him rising into a day 2 guy. So I do see what you see as a riser, and I see the Eric Stokes comparison a little bit too with his track background. So he is a guy. I think he probably will end up getting drafted higher than THT, just because he has the length, he has the speed, he's going to check those boxes. And like you said, he has to play more football at the end of the day. But he didn't seem like a guy who couldn't read route concepts or anything like that for a guy who's played so little football. He's pretty confident. Just got to get a better feel for matching receivers, because that's going to take a long way, because you can't just go to the next level and just be fast. We've seen guys like Trey Williams try to do it and it just did not work out.
That's a very solid point. I know Jim Nagy, I think, did kind of throw Noah out there a little bit the other day and said he could be a riser as well. So just throwing his name out there. And I think the one thing that I need to see improve, besides just playing more football in general, is I agree. Sticky at the top. But then I think that he knows he's fast, and it's always been there. So when he gets into the trail, he's just like, I can just kind of ease myself here, right? Like, I have enough time to make up, and that's going to get you in trouble when you're seeing guys like DK Metcalf and Tyreek Hill and those types of dudes. Like, no matter how fast you are, DK Metcalf running 4.3 and having 6.3 stride length, you're not catching
He's
that
out of
fella.
there.
Right, he's gone. You got nothing there. And then obviously the cheetah. If the cheetah gets on top of you, it doesn't care. I don't care how much recovery speed you have. You're never catching.
Never.
All right, so that was a couple guys keep an eye on. Did you have another guy you want to throw out there real quick?
I'm stuck between two from the Big Ten. Who do I like more?
I don't know.
I'll give you the two names. Names. There's a kid by the name of Corey Trice from Purdue, and then there's a kid by the name of Jamon Green from Michigan.
I know Jamon Green. I actually have an interview set up with Jamon Green. I have no idea who Trice is, so why don't you give me a little brief on Trice? So
Trice has a little bit of Richard Sherman to him.
Wow.
Not gonna lie. My notes were, I said, I'm not sure why people don't talk about him. He's been hitting at Purdue, very good in press coverage, patient with his feet. He's one of those longer guys who actually plays with his feet first and runs guys into his length at the line of scrimmage, which is what you like to see. And then he has ball skills, plus ball skills on top of that. He has really good awareness in zone coverage. It's like when I'm reading this too, you're like, wow, shows good zone eyes, rear routes, and gains depth in cover 2, leverages routes extremely well in cover 3, shows some good ball skills, which is always a plus. He tackles. His biggest question is going to be his overall athleticism. He's not too limited to where he's scheme specific, but I do want to see more foot speed from him. But I really did like his game a lot. I just want to see him answer some concerns.
I know this kid. I just looked him up. 23. I know him. Him. I actually hit him up for an interview too because I kind of flashed. I forgot his name, but yes. 6'3", 210. Jeez.
Yes. He's healthy.
He's got some ball production too, if I remember correctly. He's got some.
That's okay. I said plus ball skills, man. Like he has some Richard Sherman too. I think he's actually more athletic than what Richard Sherman was at whatever point in his career that he came out too. So you talk about plus ball skills, plus zone awareness, can come up and play press man. I gave him around 3rd grade off just watching him for 2 or 3 games. And then I said, could this be a day 1 guy if he answers, or could he be a round 1 guy if he just answers the athleticism concerns? Like he didn't look slow by any means, but you could just tell he's not really a burner. Same thing I thought with Jamon Green from Michigan as well. Not a burner, but he's patient at the line. Yeah, he's long, extremely patient at the line of scrimmage, runs guys into his length as well, has good eyes from zone. Just needs to work on some short area quickness things. But there's some Big Ten tied some corners, man. It's pretty crazy. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was like, why is the Big Ten having – and maybe the receivers are just bad in that conference. I don't know.
It could be. I mean, it could be. But you say that, though, and Greg Newsome went in the first round last year. Michigan's usually got a guy. Michigan State has a guy every once in a while. So, like, Ohio State, obviously.
Northwestern has another one. Northwestern has another one, too, man. Cameron Mitchell.
Oh, really? I know they have a safety, Brandon Joseph, who is phenomenal.
Stud.
Phenomenal. Dude, Jesse Bates reincarnated, dude.
That's exactly what he seems like.
Good. Oh, my God. Dude, like, playing single high is fantastic, but then they throw him into the slot and just let him play man. I'm just like, dude, are you serious right now?
I loved Jesse Bates when he came out. Loved him. Still love him now.
Everybody got so like gun shy on him because they're like, he's skinny. Okay,
that's
he's
fine.
Skinny.
Just keep him back there.
He's away from the ball. He doesn't need to be. Exactly. No, absolutely. The way you described Trice, the name that came into my mind a little bit just off your description was St. Juice last year. That was kind of how I felt about St. Juice out of Minnesota a little bit. Like length for pace. What athlete is he? But he ended up being testing as a fantastic athlete. So I'm like, okay, check. We're good.
But then you throw those ball skills with Trice, and it's like, ooh, you got something.
Yes. I mean, 6'3", 210, like you said. I feel like there are some like dumb-sized defensive backs this year. Like you're not talking about like. We can't even talk about Kyle Hamilton, obviously, in safety, obviously, because he's not a sleeper at all. But, like,
oh, Lord.
Isaiah Palomalo from USC, 6'4". Like, there's just – and there's this kid. I don't know if you've seen this kid yet. He's probably more of a linebacker safety type. Like, he might actually be a big nickel type of player.
Is it Weatherford?
Sterling Weatherford, baby. Yeah, Ohio. He's good, man. He's good. I liked him a ton.
Solid player.
Like, I think he's going to end up being, like – first down, he's going to be the big Sam, right? Like he's going to be that big nickel type of player. And then they're going to slide him in at will linebacker. Do
you know who he reminded me of when I watched him?
Adam Archuleta. I don't know. Go ahead.
Way back. What came to mind for me was Miles Killebrew when I watched him.
I like it. Because I felt like I mean, because I don't think that he's like the greatest athlete of all time, but like he was a little loose in man coverage. Like it wasn't terrible. Like it wasn't
definitely
like
could guard tight ends.
It wasn't debilitating, you know. Like it was solid. Yeah, he had a couple reps where like he was working in the slot and they ran like post wheel on him, and he ran with their wheel route and flipped his hips, located the ball. I'm like,
he was good. He was good in the curl flat, good in the hook curls. So and that length in the hook curl is exceptional, where you can make quarterbacks have to throw it over the top and give your safeties some time to react to throws.
He's that weapon against this heavy RPO stuff now, dude. Like he's that guy.
In that window,
like Robert, like yes, that's that guy for me. Like I think that he is that dude. And then like on like when you're getting extra defensive backs in the field, he's your will linebacker. You're only keeping 2 linebackers on the field, or if you're going to dime and you just want to throw 1 linebacker out there, why can't he be it? He's 6'4", 220. Like he's not a small dude by any imagination. So Sterling Weatherford, that's a good one. I want to get to these last couple questions because obviously I'm not going to have you on too often. So let's get to Husam's question. Shout out to Husam, great guy, great friend of the show. Does a lot of stuff for us over at the Believe in NFL Draft Prospect podcast as well. So shout out to Husam. How can a defensive back train to get loose hips? Is it prevalent more in players that are better at man than zone? So you're a cornerback, so I'm going to let you go a little more in depth on this. I will say, no matter if you're playing man, zone, no matter if you're 6'3", 5'9", whatever, doesn't matter. You need loose hips, man. That's like one of the first things. You need to be oily, baby. You need to be able to open up, whether you're cover 3 exclusive, whether you're man exclusive, whether you're a cover 2 guy, like whatever. Quick twitch and loose hips are a necessity. So talk to me a little bit about, because you're a cornerback, training to get your hips a little more fluid, get a little more, just range of motion when you're getting out of your breaks, all that type of stuff.
The biggest thing for a lot of guys, especially taller guys, you'd be surprised how many guys don't stretch. Like a lot of guys don't do any kind of stretching. Another big thing would be plyometrics. One of the best ways that any DBs can train is the way that I train, is training in the sand. Training in the sand is going to make you have to really get out there. When you see guys make breaks, you want to see guys who can open up their hips and be able to take a step forward instead of stepping back under themselves when they come out of those breaks. It's kind of one of the things I talked to you about with Noah Daniels. Some guys, are they not fast with foot speed, or are they just not able to accelerate out of their hips? You got to be able to burst out of your hips so you can stay on top of routes and not put you in those out of phase positions. It's just one of those things where guys have to really focus on, because it's a minute detail that a lot of guys don't think about. A lot of guys just think about their footwork and different things of that nature. But stretching, doing all kinds of plyometric work that's going to make you explode out of the hips, just training explosive movements is what's really going to help those at the end of the day.
Yep, absolutely. I know a lot of guys when I was coaching, like football players were track guys too. And that was like the biggest thing, was like from a static or a dynamic, like you are stretching constantly and getting your limbs loose. Like those guys are a necessity. I like the sand work. I listened to your podcast where you were talking a little bit about, it was more specific on why you had to move out of a sand pit, but I did like the conversation obviously about training in the sand. I think is huge, because a lot of tension there, right? And the ability to you can't false step in the sand. You're going to fall on your face.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest, like making sure guys are taking that step out. Like when you're coming out of your hips, you really got to throw your whole body when you're going in the sand. It's going to make you throw your whole body, learn how to balance yourself, train your momentum, train yourself to be able to actually perform fast movements with great balance.
And so in your opinion, Jeremiah, would you say that, so if a guy is just very struggles in the flexibility aspect, the loose hip, if a guy is a little tight hip, do you feel like a guy can go from tight hip to very loose, or do you feel like there's kind of a ceiling on how much looser a guy can get, if that makes sense?
It's tough, because to go from tight hip to oily hips is
right. It's impossible, right? Like it's not a thing.
I've seen maybe a couple guys do it, but you have to take a lot. That's where it comes to knowing the mental side of a certain player. Like what kind of, like, is this a guy who really takes all this seriously? Like, is this a guy who's going to go do Pilates and yoga for a whole summer? Or is he just going to be a guy who stretches 2 times out of the week and hope his hips are a little better? But you can definitely always improve hips. I do believe that. I don't think a guy is too tall or too tight to be able to improve it. It's something that could definitely be improved.
Yeah, and one quick scouting kind of note on that is I've seen a lot of people say, like, some guys, like let's take a Jalen Ramsey, for instance, right? Like, so I've seen some people call him tight. I would like to just put this out there. There's a difference between stride length and segmented mover. Okay. I just want to put it out there for anybody that is in the NFL draft world that wants to get into scouting or even is in scouting and just struggles with this sometimes. A guy getting in and out of his pedal or in and out of his brakes, a guy that is taller, it's going to look a lot different than a guy that is 5'8". Don't confuse the fact that it looks different with a guy has loose or tight hips. You can tell very quickly when Jalen Ramsey opens up, that dude covers a ton of ground. He's out of there, okay? So just because the guy's taller, I feel like that happens a lot too with like tight ends sometimes. Like a lot of guys, I think, felt like Mike Gesicki coming out of Penn State was like not very athletic, but it was just that he's got such long legs. It doesn't look natural, but like it just – I think people need to train their eye a little better for the – size profiles of getting in and out of brakes, in and out of pedal, like all that type of stuff, turning and running. Like, just quick note there. Last question of the night. I don't know how much work you have done on the edge group, which of course is 3 defensive ends, 3-4 outside linebackers, guys that are playing on ball on the edge of a defense. Asking, I guess this is assuming, this is from Brett, by the way. Shout out to Brett who asked, and I'm assuming that he is, preemptive, like Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon is edge 1. Like, let's just assume that he's going there. He says, who's edge 2? Do you have a guy? I have a guy.
So obviously you have Karlaftis and Drake Jackson from USC. I like both of those guys, but for me, a guy that recently popped up for me within the last 2 weeks, Nick Bonito. Really like Nick Bonito a lot.
Wow, you like Bonito, do you? Okay.
I think the versatility is there. I'm a huge versatility guy, but I also think he has an explosive first step off the edge. He's pretty good with his hands. Seen him do some good hand swipes. And I think that's one thing that comes really late for pass rushers coming out of college. They usually have no idea how to use his hands. I think he's really good at using his hands. He needs to be able to convert speed to power. I would like to see him be able to do that. But I like Caleb on Chason, and I actually think he's better than what Chason was. I think he's going to be able to provide you more as far as pass rush and being able to cover. So that would be my late edge 2 riser in the year for me.
So I haven't watched Bonito in depth yet. I will ask you a simple question about him because I know he has a background of playing linebacker, and obviously they moved him to an on-ball role. My question is, do you think he profiles more as like he is pass rushing the majority of the time, or do you think he's more like 3-4 Sam where like he's going to play in space a little bit?
He's probably going to play in space a little bit. But man, when you see that first step, because at first I was like, I don't really see why they got him lined up down here. Then I said, oh, I get it now. This is what this is. I got you.
Dude, that's like have you seen Myjai Sanders from Cincinnati?
I have not. I've heard a lot about him though.
Dude, he's tall. He's right around 6'5". He's got 33-inch arms. Apparently, he measured in this spring at only 227. So, like, my dude is
oh my god,
sleek. He needs to add some weight. He's listed at like 257 on the roster. He was like 220 something in the spring. I don't know if his weight just fluctuates. That is a crazy decrease, though. I would have guessed he was like 240 because we know how small are. Like, he was no way he was 257. Like, I would have said 6'4.5", 6'5", 240. But I hope he gets closer to that weight because this first step is stupid, man. I'm like, some of these, like these offensive tackles aren't even out of their stance, and sometimes people say that, and it's like very like you're over embellishing a little bit. Nope. This guy gets off that quick. So
that's how Bonito is. He hasn't even had to use power. It's just I'm in the backfield. By the time you get into your stance, it's like, well, I'm just gonna keep just blowing by people.
And I like those kind of guys because for me, the most important trait that you can have is the ability to win the outside track. Because I can put strength on you. I can teach you inside counters. But if you can't win outside, then you are a one-trick power rusher. And sometimes that does not work. For my answer, though, edge 2, you mentioned him being in there. Karlaftis from Purdue is I actually interviewed him, and I had an article about him. So quick side story on him. I think he came from a military family, but he was actually living in Greece for a large part of his life. Came to Indiana, right by Purdue when he was in 8th grade. He hadn't played football, and apparently he was just like super uncoordinated at the point. But like he went into high school, eventually caught on, went to Purdue as like a high 4-star, bordering on 5-star kid. And I mean, 17 and a half tackles for loss as a true freshman. And the thing that he told me was like, he showed up at like 255, 260. Before he knew it, he was 275, 280 because he didn't lift in high school. He didn't know how to lift. He was like, I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. So now my guy is a player who is 6'4", 280 pounds. He reminds me a lot of, and this is going to be a throwback for a lot of people out there. Hopefully it's not, because then that'll show my age a little bit. But he reminds me a lot of Grant Windstrom that used to play with the Rams, who was
wow,
big Nebraska defensive end. It was like 6'4", 6'5", 280. But like the thing about Karlaftis that is people are going to mistake is they're going to be like power, right? He has power. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Like he's played anywhere from 5 to 7 to 9. Like he lines up everywhere. This past year, they moved to a 3-man front. He was actually playing like 3-4 defensive end. Now they're back to an even man front this year. So he's going to be more on as a traditional edge player. But the thing that really stands out for him, you know, like power, check, size, check. He's got all those things. There's no question. Plays with a great motor, dominates the run game. I think he's a much better athlete than people give him credit for. I think he's going to be high 4'6" athlete at 280 pounds. Like my dude can run a little bit. And the best attribute and the thing that I kept writing pluses next to, his closing burst for 280 pounds is ridiculous, man. Like he closes so much ground for a guy that big. So he is definitely my early favorite. I'm not quite like, I keep putting him in a mock drafts in like the top 20, like 10 to 20 range. Like I'm not there top 10 Karlaftis because I think there's guys like DeMarvin Leal, who's a defensive lineman from Texas A&M, who's really versatile. There's a lot of offensive linemen this year. There's good, you know, those are kind of the cornerbacks and safeties are fantastic this year. Like if Kyle Hamilton gets out of the top 10, I will renounce my NFL draft. I will never talk again because I haven't seen a missed tackle on film from Kyle Hamilton. But all that to say, I'm not quite top 10 with Karlaftis this year yet, but if he has another dominant season, if he 10 plus sacks and he takes his game up the next step, I could see that definite edge to conversation. Appreciate everybody out there in the Twitterverse, YouTube land, or Facebook Park. I don't know. That submitted questions for this week. Really appreciate it. Again, Ryan Roberts at Rise and Draft on Twitter. Wishing David Turner all the best. Hopefully he's back with us next week. Shout out to One Institution for a great platform that continues to provide us with a voice in the sporting world. And of course, big shout out to Jeremiah Bogan at BlessedBogan5. Jeremiah, if you want to tease anything you working on, man, anything you want to throw out there real quick, I really did appreciate you having you on tonight, man.
No, just thank you for having me on. Obviously, hope you guys check out my podcast with my buddy Scott Robinson Jr. on campus with JB and Skiggy or on the Around the Block podcast network. Have some really good guests. We've had some NFL guys, MLB guys, just giving guys athletes a platform to tell their own story and give them their own little space to be who they are and build their own brand. So hopefully you guys check us out. Give us a follow on campus _ATB on Twitter. And that's all.
Definitely check out the podcast. They've had Troy Pride on. They had Darian Kendrick on. They had Jordan Adams, the major leaguer, on as well. Fantastic work Jeremiah puts out there. Make sure to follow him again at BlessedBogan5. Appreciate everybody for taking some time with us tonight. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, rate, give us a 5-star review. We really appreciate everybody so much. Thank you all. We hope everyone has a